I started teaching private sewing lessons. A lovely lady asked if I would be available to teach her daughter how to sew because she was really interested in making her own clothes. So after a few messages of back and forth setting up a meeting, I actually started to get a little bit nervous because although I'm used to teaching in large groups, doing a one-to-one is something new to me. I went for the first lesson and my student really enjoyed it, and we have actually booked on more sessions, so I'm going to say that it was a success. She is really focused on what it is that she wants to be sewing, and I'm just helping her reach those goals. Currently we are cloning one of her favorite tops, and next we are going to move either into a pair of shorts or a skirt because she wants to wear it as a coord set. I'm just super excited to see all the progress that she makes. Now for the projects that I have been working on this week. I thought by now I would have finished the Sabina skirt, but there is just so much going on currently that again I have had to leave that to the side for a little bit. I did pick it up though last night, and what I managed to do was sew the side slits. So I sewed the side seams of the skirt together and I stopped stitching basically where my knee is so that I could leave quite a large side slit. I overlocked the skirt pieces individually so that I could press them open and actually have a bit of a seam allowance to push onto either side of the slit. And the seam allowance that I pressed over was 3/8 of an inch. So when I went to sew the seam down at the slit, I used that same seam allowance, 3/8 of an inch. Now I sewed from the right hand side, which meant that I couldn't exactly see where the seam ended, and that meant that in some areas I just missed the seam, so it was flapping a bit. Now I didn't want to unpick the whole thing because that was going to take me a good 10-15 minutes. So what I decided to do was create a second row of stitches, so just make a feature out of it. So I ended up sewing 2 rows of stitches on either side, and then at the top here where the V is, I backstitched a couple of times just to give that seam a little bit of extra strength, because when I walk there's probably going to be quite a bit of force upon that seam, so I just backstitched a few times to give it that extra bit of strength. I did also think about top stitching all the way to the top of the seam, but I wasn't sure if I was going to like the way that it looked over here by the skirt, so I just decided to skip that. The next thing I moved on to was the waistband. This year I'm on a bit of a mission to not buy anything sewing related, so just to reduce my costs overall, and that means I am trying to use whatever I have in my stash. Now the Sabina calls for 1.5 inch wide elastic, and I do have that width elastic in my stash, but just not long enough. I am about 30 centimeters short, and my immediate thought was I can just go and buy something online quickly, but then I thought to myself, that is not my mission this year. My mission is to reduce my sewing costs. So what I decided to do was use 1 inch wide elastic instead, but because this is quite narrower than what the waistband is, I had to do something else. For the elastic not to shift up and down in the waistband, what I decided to do was use the difference from one elastic to the other and sew a ring right around the top of my waistband. So that's about 1/2 inch difference, and from the top edge of my skirt I stitched 1/2 inch down, and that created a smaller channel for my 1 inch elastic to go through. The vision that I have in my head is once this elastic is threaded through, the top is going to create a little bit of like a ruffle edge. I think it's going to look cute, and again it's a little hack, it's a personal touch I have placed on it, although unexpected, it's something different. After I've threaded the elastic through, I'm not going to stitch in the ditch like the pattern instructions say to. What I'm going to do instead is just sew 2 rows of stitches over the top of the elastic, just for it to have a little bit of a different look. And then after that is done, all that's left to do is overlock the edges of the waistband and hem the skirt. Now last week I said I was going to be finished with the skirt this week, so I don't want to say that I'm going to be finished with the skirt for the next video. But come on, if I'm not finished just overlocking an edge, threading an elastic and hemming a skirt in 7 days, what am I actually doing with my time? When I'm finished with this Sabina skirt, I'm just hoping that all the little hacks that I have done to it actually turn out like the vision I have in my head. I feel sometimes that there's nothing worse than this image you have created in your mind, you're trying to work towards it. Sometimes you have to improvise on certain things, but you're still working towards something, and if it doesn't work out, it's just a bit deflating. That sounded a bit dramatic for just a simple Sabina skirt, but at the end of the day, it's something that I'm working on, a project I'm creating, and that I want unique uniqueness to it. A not so exciting project that I tackled this week is hemming curtains for a friend of ours. Now, hemming projects that I have created from scratch, I don't mind at all. But hemming something that is already made, for some reason, I just don't enjoy doing it. But anyway, this friend of ours has helped us so much around the house. He's helped me put the flooring in my sewing room, helped me build my center table here. He's helped with so many other tasks around the house that I thought hemming 3 curtains for him is not that big of a job. Now, he handed me a pair of blackout curtains, and I'd never worked with that fabric before, but it felt kind of like scuba fabric, and that meant that I had to take extra care under the iron when I was pressing it. All I did was I unpicked the hem that was already there, I folded up more the hem and then pressed it down and stitched it in place. It was a super simple project, one that I don't like doing, but it's just gonna make my friend happy, so I decided to do it. By the way, if you're enjoying today's video, please click the like button down below to let me know. I have finally gotten my hands on some more yarn to continue with my purple knitted sweater. I have already had to open up the red skein to be able to continue with my sleeve, and I'm actually nearly finished with my sleeve. I'm about 3/4 done. So I started by picking up stitches around the armhole for the sleeve, but I actually didn't pick as many stitches as the pattern called for. I actually ended up picking 50 stitches instead of 56 like the pattern calls for, and that means that my sleeve is going to be slightly narrower. I could have gone back and picked up an extra 6 stitches, but to keep it even, I would have had to undo probably half of the stitches I had picked up and then re-pick them. So it wasn't something I wanted to do at the time, so I just kept on going. I'm hoping that when I block it, they will stretch out a little bit. One of the worries I had when making the sleeves is I wanted to make sure that I could get my stripes going across from the bodice onto the sleeve. Since the stripes are quite bold, I didn't want to have a mismatch because I think visually that would have bugged me. So I really tried to match the stripes across. How I did that was at the bottom of the armhole. I saw the last color I had there was cream, but at this time I had already picked up the stitches in purple, and again I didn't want to undo them, so I just made the second row starting with the cream yarn. And then after that I just continued down in pattern, and I think it's worked out pretty well. I did forget though that the sleeve was a dropped shoulder, which actually worked out perfect for me because as the shoulder is dropped, the stripes are actually more aligned across, because I was worried that the stripes would go like this and actually angle up to the side, but they didn't. To finish my sleeve off, I'm going to make another repeat of these bold stripes and then add the cuff to the end. I also managed to crochet the red rows on either side of the cream stripes that I had forgotten to do last week, and I am pretty happy with how the bodice is looking. I'm actually super excited to finish this make, but I think that by the time I'm finished it, the weather's probably going to be very warm and I won't get much use of it until the cooler months. Having said this, I do live in the northwest of England where we have a lot of cool and rainy days, so I might get a lot more use out of it sooner than what I think. I would also like to remind you that last week I released my first ever bag sewing pattern along with my new website. I would love it if you could go have a look not just at my website but also at my bag sewing pattern and tell me what you think of it. I'm going to leave the link in the description box below so that you can go and have a look around. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel for more. That's it from me today. Bye for now.